Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. Today's going to be going over the Grandmaster Devil's Lair. This season it's a little bit tougher for some reason, or maybe it was just kind of the way that I was set up. I just wanted to have a little bit of fun. I didn't want to go arc and do the normal Wish Ender build like I normally would do. So in this case I went with the Quicksilver Storm with the Catalyst, so it's a strand weapon. I went with the Hollow Denial so that I could stun the Overload champions. And then I went with the Storm Chaser because right now the linears are getting the overcharged and it's arc, so either way I was going to get the additional damage. For the artifact, I'm using the Anti-Barrier Auto Rifle and the Overload Trace Rifle, and then just as a filler I did the Unstoppable Glaive. I have authorized mods arc so that I could run the arc additional ammo. I have authorized mods strand and authorized mods melee. And then from here I've got improved unraveling. That's going to help my primary weapon. Same thing with deeper origins. I was getting more nano tracer rockets quickly. I was running Strand Soldier because my weapons were getting unraveling when I was getting Woven Mail, so that was a nice bonus. Counter Charge, that way I get armor charges consistently, and the targets affected by Strand were going to be additional damage from Arc and Void, so if anybody was running those, which I did have some teammates that were, they were going to get some help there when I had everything unraveled. And then squad goals, I was giving everybody Woven Mail on finishers, and I also had my shield while getting a finisher as well, so I'll go over that right now. So that's the proximity ward. When you get a finisher, you get an overshield. That way I can get in there and safely get shields. I was running powerful attraction to get my orbs, so that way I can also, keep up my woven mail and keep up my armor charges. Time dilation to keep my armor charges going. And the reason why the armor charges were important, I'm only running 70 resilience, because while I have an armor charge going, I get the additional 30 from the Font of Endurance, so that's 100 resilience. So it's effectively 100 resilience, 90 recovery, 90 discipline. I was running the Harmonic Siphon so that I was getting the orbs from killing with my primary weapon. And then I forgot to switch out my other siphon, so when I ran the actual encounter, I ran it with the Solar Siphon. But in this case, you can swap that out to Void Siphon. That way you get kills with your Void weapon, and you're able to still keep getting orbs that way. Or you can just swap it out for like another heavy, which probably what I should have done is probably swap it out for another heavy. I was running Focusing Strike because I was using my Arcane Needle, my melee ability, and that was spreading to a bunch of enemies in a small area on top of my Corruption from my gauntlets. And so with the melee caused damage over time, Grasp of Devour, and my Arcane Needle unraveling, everything was taking a bunch of damage and dying, and then spreading my additional ability, which was to suspend them. So I was running the Mind Spun Evocation, so when I consumed my grenade I got Weaver's Trance. Any kills that I would get from either my weapon or any of my abilities were going to suspend them. And then I was running the Wanderer, so if you throw out your Tangle, you'll attach to something and suspend them. That was great for champions. You can just throw it right at the champion, suspend the champion, save your Shackle Grenade. And I was running the Threat of Fury, so that way I get my Tangle as far as giving me energy back to my melee. I was able to also get Woven Mail when I picked up an orb. That was what I was referring to earlier. I was suspending targets and getting class energy back, so that was keeping my kind of survivability up. And then I was also dealing damage and getting grenades back, which helps get my Shackle Grenade up, so it kind of feeds back into itself. And of course this is the Arcane Needle, normal Burst Glide, and I was running my Healing Rift. Now the next part of the build is going to be the setup for your your generation, like for your orbs. So I was running Invigoration and Innervation. I was getting Grenade Energy on orb pickup. I was also getting Melee Energy on orb pickup, so I always kind of kept that. I had stacks on stacks, so I was getting additional armor charges to keep up my Font of Endurance. Again, Arc Reserves for my Heavy. And then my Resist, I was running an Arc Resist for the snipers. I was trying not to get one shot by the snipers. I was running Firepower as well, so that way when I did get kills from the explosions, they count as the grenade, and they also then spread that as well. And you could also run the heavy-handed mod if you're getting kills with the melee, doing it that way too. As far as the weapons go, again, I was running the Quicksilver Storm, and I was running the Hollow Denial, and I actually had adaptive munitions and improved adaptive munitions, so if I wanted to burn down like a Solar Shield, for example, I could still do that. And Repulsor Brace would have come in nice if I was running a Void subclass, but this was originally built when I had made a Void build, and I keep it this way for Void builds, so that's really not going to come into play during the fight, but it's just like a nice add-on. If, for example, my teammate, there was times when my teammate used his Void ability, or he hit him with a bow, and then I was able to take advantage of Repulsor Brace. Storm Chaser, I had auto-loading and Frenzy, that way I didn't have to reload as much. And then Frenzy, of course, gives me that additional damage while I'm already in combat, so that just procs on its own normally. And so that's pretty much the build itself. The only part that the build really struggled in was that middle part when you're dealing with the tank, because everything is so far away from you. So a lot of the damage I was doing to enemies far away was really the Nano Tracer rockets, which came in clutch. And then of course I was able to get Unraveling rounds out, and the Unraveling rounds did their thing on top of my Arcane Needle. So it was still useful for crowds and stuff. It just slowed down, like the build really slowed down in that middle section. But in the first section, when everything's kind of nice and tight and pushing you, and in the final section, same thing, when everything's pushing you, the build really shines. So from here I'll let you check out the video, and I'm going to go right into the landing of the strike. So as soon as the strike kicks in, boom, we're going to go from there. So landing into the strike, you're going to of course have your two ads on the left and the right. This is an old strike, so most people are familiar with the ad setup. And just again, for whatever reason, with the mods that are part of this GM this week, like everything seemed to be doing additional damage and hitting a lot harder. As you can see, my teammate just like immediately died. And the funny thing was I joined his post and he's like, GM be good, and then he dies 3 seconds in, so I'm looking at him like, are you good? Like, are you good? Trying to make sure he's even playing still. He ends up moving, and then we move on with the Devil's Lair, and we get it done. And so everything kind of spreads out at this point. It kind of sucks, so I'm just trying to pick off things that are left over, trying to survive, trying not to burn any additional reses, for example. And you know, preferably if you're running something where you can gather them up, like if you're running Void and you got a Vortex Grenade. For me, for example, if I had my Shotgun Grenade hit properly, I would have tangled everything on the right side. So stuff like that, that's very helpful in this section. A lot of people try to sparrow through here, but it's just like a waste of reses sometimes, because you get caught up on something, or a little piece of rock will stop your progress, and that's that. And since my teammates were kind of grouped up, what I was doing was I was just kind of picking off things that were trying to get away from them, and things that kind of back up behind cover, like this Acolyte, for example, and forcing them back their way. And then also making sure that I didn't get sniped from the other side. Now be careful up here, because the ship can kill you. It can one-shot you without the right protection. And so I'm trying to get it to either go away or to get rid of its gun. And it just happened to disappear and try to get a shot off, so I ducked behind and cover just to make sure that I was still good. Another thing for some reason in this GM, and it happens in a lot of them, but it's particularly in this one, that once you start attacking champions, like all the other little small ads will just make sure that for whatever reason they try to prevent you from killing the captain before it can actually get its before its stun period is over. So they try to waylay you as best they can. As you can see, all those grenades came in, and I spent that whole time in critical, because that's just how the game is set up, where you try to attack the champion and you're putting heavy into it, and all the other stuff starts to step up to try to defend the champion. Now this next section is also really good for this build. If you happen to be one of the first ones there, you can actually get in there and drop your melee while you consume your grenade. And then from there, the thralls will spread everything through each other. They'll spread it to the additional acolytes, and they'll also spread it to the barrier champ. So it's a nice section to kind of get your melee off. As you can see, that's what it looks like there. Bunch of tangles going out too, so that I can toss these tangles and cause additional suspends. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. So you can see the Wanderer kind of comes in handy, because I didn't have my shotgun grenade, but since I had a tangle up, I was able to get that suspend off on the champ and make it a nice easy kill. Now in this next section, I'm going to try to make sure I try to get the wizard if I can, because the wizard is the one that can kind of kill you really quickly with its arc bursts. And I was able to successfully get it by getting the acolyte next to it. And then in this case, I was using this to string up the champion for my teammates while I dealt with the thrall that were pushing me. There I got surprised by the drag, and I wasn't expecting the drag to be there, so I just like, fuck it, I'm gonna hit this so it doesn't punch me and kill me. But same thing here, Barrier Knight, you can see how much control this build gives you, and it just takes a lot of enemies that would otherwise be really annoying out of the fight. Like there, I think I snagged the wizard, actually like both wizards. And then my goal was to try to get that arcane needle off on that back vandal, so that way that vandal would spread unraveling or suspend the other one, and we'd have to deal with the two snipers in the back, because those are the most annoying two enemies in the room at this time. Then we all fall back to the train, and the train is a good spot, but just to keep in mind that it can get overrun, so you have to try to make sure you have something or you save something to stun or to kind of minimize your exposure to the enemies that spawn like directly in front of us. And I don't remember that happening in like older seasons, like back when Devil's Lair was original and like D1 and like the original Devil's Lair brought back to D2. But they do spawn directly in front of you. I feel like I remember them spawning by the boxes, but now there's an enemy spawn right where we're standing. So just keep that in mind. You know that you're going to eventually have to deal with a large group of enemies with a knight, and you're going to want to make sure that you take that down as fast as possible, because they can just turn and melt you real fast, especially with the modifiers this week. Now with the Shanks, my goal with the Shanks too is the same thing as the other rooms with the Thrall, is to just try to get out my suspends, so that way none of the Shanks can make it to my teammates, and just get an exploder, take us all out, or take out two of us and put us in a bad position, because those snipers, they like to hide, the Vandal snipers, and you won't even think they're there, and they'll be there at the back of the room just waiting for their opportunity to step out because you're busy shooting something else. I don't know if you noticed me trying to kind of get away from the hunter that was doing its quick fall, because it sometimes can kill you if you're directly underneath him. And you'll see here in a second, like I get like one of the wildest bounces, and I would have died if it wasn't for the fix where Destiny devs fix the collision damage. Now, here's that spawn that I was telling you about that happens like right in front. So fortunately, the hunter's ready, I was ready, and we took everything out immediately. Although what's weird is that the anti-barrier mechanic wasn't working on the gun, because I was shooting the hell out of the barrier and it wasn't actually popping his barrier. So I don't know if it was because like the barrier was already kind of quote-unquote popped in the super and it was just buggy, and I was getting damage on him and the barrier wasn't up. As you can see, I was getting damage on him. But that was just like a weird happenstance with his barrier staying up. Oh, there it is. There's the hunter trying to kill me there with his quick fall. And so anyway, so the barrier died, and that was just like weird that the barrier itself wouldn't pop, but I was still getting damage on him. And so these next group of Shanks are just business as usual. You want to make sure that you gather them up, and you get out your arcane needle. As you can see, it's putting in work. And when I get into situations where there's a bunch of like tracking bullets, or there's kind of like the enemies are basically cheating because they're pre-firing you, what I'll do is I'll drop my arcane needle with my corruption, and I'll just let it spread around and do its work. And it really is a nice addition to have to the team, because you can do damage and you can weaken enemies from around the corner without exposing yourself to harm. And then when you're ready, you get out there and you dump all your heavy into them and take them down, especially these champions. And there it is there, the arcane needle's going out, the damage is going out, it's keeping the overload champions from really getting their health fully back. And then I'm using the trace rifle as well to prevent their generation, because if you hit them with their own overload suppressing ability, they'll stop their health regeneration. Although they are definitely opportunities so to work on overloads and how they respond to stuns and to the specific weapons that are supposed to suppress them. Sometimes those don't even work. As you can see here, I'm prioritizing now these Vandals that are in the back. My teammate wasn't ready for that other Vandal for some reason, though. Got wrecked. This is me looking for that last back Vandal. I didn't know that he was already dead, so I was trying to get a suspend on him. That way when my teammate got the res, that the other teammate wouldn't just get sniped immediately and go down. Now in here I try to save my shock grenade for the overload. That way it just makes it a nice easy transition and nobody loses a life being in close proximity to the overload itself. I also try to pop the mines on the ground. Make sure we don't have to deal with that while trying to kill the overload. Here, the first thing I did was try to get a needle out, and I was hoping that the Vandal was going to step over to the other Vandal and spread the unraveling and the corruption to the other Vandal, but it looks like it just got to the barrier, and the barrier was immune at the moment, so I just got one out of the two of them, but at least I got one sniper down on the left side. And then on the right side, if you can see, peeking behind the barrier is another sniper, so you just have to be careful. You see here I moved out of the way once I was low, got my health back, didn't want to risk it. And even though I was still retreating, the other snipers were still locked in on me. Like, there's two teammates standing in the doorway, but they want to shoot at me. I didn't want to mess around with these other snipers, so I just popped my super here, trying to kill the two snipers that are on the other side, as well as keep any of the dregs from running away and trying to attack me later. Although I think a few of them did successfully hide back in the garage, and when I came down to get an angle on the enemies from the left, they pushed me, and they almost got me there. That's why earlier I was trying to avoid getting hit with a melee. Thankfully, again, I have the finisher shield, so that really comes in handy. Now here I spend a lot of time working on the brig, and the Vandal itself is going to push me. And again, what I'm doing is I saw the enemies run behind the brig, and I was hoping that if I poisoned the brig, it would back up and take a step back into that crowd, and then spread the corruption and the unraveling into the crowd. As you can see, enemies do step up and try to protect the brig, so that's kind of a nice benefit of attacking some of the larger enemies from a safe place, because that'll force some of the adds that would normally either sit in the middle or sit in the back left in my position that will move up, and that's going to help thin the herd a little bit, so that way they're not all shooting at the same time and getting kind of those instant kills on you with all of their bullets just immediately tracking you. And on the brig, what I do here is once I pop his front and he's exposed his crit spot, I'll string him up with the suspend, and I'll try to go for the finish with the heavy, because it's worth it. The brigs are really annoying enemies to deal with. And I had heavy on the ground too, for that matter. So now my goal is to try to mess with the barrier. In this case, I do get the arcane needle out so that the barrier can't heal very easily, and I wasn't going to let the sniper push me off of my target. So I hit the super just to try to either get the sniper to hide, or to actually maybe kill the sniper with one of the tracking needles that come out. This Marauder as well thought he was going to get the best of me, and I just give him a little bit of a little bit of a beat down for him trying to do that to me. I return the favor. And there, that was just unfortunate. I was trying to string up the Overload Captain, but my teammate ends up showing up, and we both end up getting the Overload Champion down. It was just very frustrating that I wasted all that heavy, and I get killed from around the corner by the Overload. And what was even more annoying is I think the Overload wasn't shooting at me. I think the Overload was shooting at my teammate, and he just happened to track to my teammate, which crossed behind me, and then ended up getting me killed. So if that's the case, that's pretty crappy game design as far as the way that it goes. But, you know, it is what it is. We still have plenty of reses. As you can see here, I'm taking advantage of my suspense. I'm wanting to move up and get that tangle so that I can string up the Overload Captain. And what I'm trying to do here is just to make sure that that Overload can't heal. It's frustrating again because my teammate used his melee abilities, all three of them, with his new aspect to try to get as much damage down on him, and he still just got away and healed. So again, Overloads need another tuning pass on how quickly they heal and what they're getting through, and also just, you know, to make sure that they're not so hard to stun. Because just like not barrier champions, but unstoppable champions get in that mode where they just run you down, and no matter what you do, they won't stun. Overload's gonna have that same mode, and hopefully Bungie can fix that, because it's still an annoyance that you stun them, they're unstunned, there's like that timer they can't be unstunned, and then even when you're trying to stun them again, they just run you down. So, again, hope that's a fix. But the way that it's going, though, these overloads and unstoppables have been in the game forever, and they've never been fixed, so I'm not holding my breath. Now here what we did is we went with the original old strat of tucking into that left side, but what I was trying to do was just get out there and clear the ads and get that overload, so that way my teammates didn't get killed while trying to cross. And since he was going to get away, I was like, let me just pop my super and make sure that this guy goes down. And my teammate had the same exact idea, so we were able to double up on supers and push down that overload quickly. You know, for me, my goal to deal with the waves was to get my Weaver's Trance out, and then to get out my Arcane Needle like normal in crowds, and just try to keep that one side that I'm on clear. So I was kind of just trying to make sure that I dominated this left side. Normally in a regular strike, I'm out there toward the spawns, just dominating everything as it lands, but since everything is so deadly in this GM right now, I was just kind of hanging out in this room to try to make sure I had cover from the boss, from anything coming up the side. Anytime something rushed me, I was ready there with my suspend, and just even shooting my tangles so that way I can get some more damage onto enemies as they move up, and just trying to make sure that I'm just peeking and taking my shots and not getting too greedy, because the boss will kill you. And as you can see, the shanks there are pretty endless, so it really is nice to have that suspense that they don't even get close to my teammates or myself. And then another reason why I chose Howl Denial was the Void itself, because I was prepared for these smaller servitors, and I wanted to pop their shields rather easily for myself and my teammates, just so I don't have to be dealing with trying to get through them with an with a non-matching weapon, like an arc weapon, or if I was trying to get through them and I was running the Wish Hunter build. Wish Hunter does a pretty good job at popping shields, especially if you're running a class that allows it to be overcharged, because it gets that overcharged kinetic, but it's still not as good as having the exact match. You'll have to hit a couple more shots than you would if you were just running a normal matching color. Plus you get the stun effect as well, which helps. Although this server didn't even care about the stun effect. It just kept running. Now here I was just trying to do as much damage as I could and chunk the boss down, and for some reason I hit him. He took my super with him, and it seems like the explosions didn't damage him. So just be careful that when you're popping a super like that, if you're running also Brood Weaver, not to throw your super out before the teleport, because it could get negated like it looks like mine did. And I saw him chunk down, but I think he chunked down because of the Void super, not because of my super. But who knows, maybe my super damage kicked in delayed and stacked on top of the Void damage. Now this part is pretty straightforward, although the additional warning that I would give here is to watch out for any of the melee ads that are invisible. So you'll get a lot of marauders running in, as you see one there off the corner, and if you're not paying attention, they can kill you or your teammates rather quickly, because you're in your well, you think you're safe, or you're working on a champion like we're doing here, and then all of a sudden you hear slices, 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 and then your shields are down and you're in a tough situation. So that's me protecting my teammate right there, just doing my best to make sure that they don't get a free kill. And again, it's tempting to run out there to try to get that tangle. Like, I wanted to do it, but I was like, it's not worth it, because everything right now is focusing us, and I don't want to die in a bad spot and waste a revive for no reason, or even expose one of my teammates to danger. So I'm just kind of picking at stuff from the safety of the corner, just taking my time. I wanted to make sure I got this done on my first try. Yep, see the invisible vandal strikes again. There's just so much damage that goes out for some reason. The Devil's Lair wasn't really this intense before, from what I remember, as far as the amount of damage going out. The fights themselves are kind of meh, they're whatever, but just the amount of sheer damage where you go from full health to critical like nothing. And there, as you can see, I popped the shield and put a needle on him, so that way he would stay unraveling and he wouldn't be able to get his shield back. And hopefully my teammates would realize that and help me pick him off. He was in a bad spot, though. Now it's the burn phase, so while I'm dealing with the ads on the left side and making sure none of the ads get to my teammates, they're hitting him with heavy and everything they can to make sure that they just kind of finish off the adventure. And even that means sacrificing, that's fine, as long as we got the win. So that was a GG. I'm going to basically come in them from here. I'm going to go over to the results screen so you kind of see how the build worked out, how many kills I was able to get, and how much score I was able to amass for my team. If you have any questions on the build, or if you have any additional questions about your build, for example, you're like, I'm running a Hunter or I'm running a Titan, what do you think I should run? Just drop me a comment and I'll be able to get back to you as soon as possible and try to help you guys out. But otherwise, thanks very much for watching the end of the video. If this video helps you out, I really appreciate a like and subscribe. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.